Hello everybody, welcome to the Q&A and Critique number 80. It's currently 2015 UTC, which is 3:15 local time here on Friday, the 24th of February. And we're here in the Let's Be for Artists edition community doing this streamed digital art questions and answers event. And today's special guest is you. Mainly because I mixed up my dates a little bit, so the very special guest that I was praising from last week, he is currently booked for the 3rd of March, which is next Friday. And this past week I've been shifting houses and having a lot of fun. So today we're going to be taking a look at topics concerning what we missed out from last week, which is what's coming to Blender 3.5 and Bforartists 3.5. And from that, we're also going to take a look at, sorry, camera's not working, but that's okay. Looking at using gesture or figure drawing from gesture and the grease pencil to help us plan and apply animation to different poses. And this is something that is a mixture of techniques where we take 2D art or techniques or concepts from art and figure drawing into the idea of animation. And also we're going to take a look at doing an art review and from finished art by artists here in the community, including people we have seen before, Les, Master Crusader, and others, and a couple other new artists who have been working very diligently and being brave to share their art in the finished art portal. Remember, if you have art that you'd like to have showcased in the future, feel free to just submit it in the finished art thread here in the Discord server, and we'll go through it every week. We love taking a look at this stuff, and you never know, maybe our special guest will also take a review, give some good comments and feedback for your art in the future. We also have a question asked by Haley that we will be taking a look at later on. And with that, I also will be sharing a couple of resources, the grease pencil pack from Pepeland, I'll share that link again, and also a couple of rigs that are available for free to practice. So without further ado, let's begin. And we'll start with what we couldn't do last week, and that's what's new with Bforartists 3.5.0 and with Blender. So, if you remember, Blender 3.41 came out not long ago. I think it came out just after Christmas, and we had a number of updates. So I've gone through each of the commits or weeks that have been from there, which is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks up until now. There are features coming later, but I filtered through feature updates from rendering, performance, and other minor features like API updates and things. And I've focused principally on things that are coming to the interface and user experience, which are the exciting things. So something I want to share is the first thing that we have is the grease pencil cursor size is the real size in the 3D viewport. So if you take a look at my the brush size that I have here on my screen, you can see that the actual size that I have set inside the viewport is exactly how it should be inside the 3D space. So my cursor is 1:1 with the actual size of the brush. That's kind of nice. So that's come into 3.5. Another thing is the motion panels from animation is being recreated. If we take a look at the let's just go to a main view. We take a look at the armature settings or the object settings. The motion paths panel has been recreated to be much more nicer inside Blender, both in Blender and Bforartists. That's kind of nice. It's a little bit easier to handle motion paths. Another thing with the asset browser is that we have a category called All. So when you click on All, it will load all of your libraries, all of your categories, all of the assets from everything, so you can see everything. which is nice. They also improve the speed of how these things load. Another thing that's coming is the graph editor has a new ease operator in the animation, though I haven't actually used it yet. The grease pencil modifier has got love. The real-time compositor, if we go inside the camera view here, so if I'm in the rendered view right like this, and let's just swap cameras around, make a new camera. Oh, sorry, in object mode, make a new camera, make it the active camera, jump into that camera, move, whoops, there we go, so we can actually see something. So if we take a look at this character, if you go to the top right, underneath the render shader balls, you have the real-time compositor, which is now feature complete almost. And if you change it to camera, this means we can go inside the compositor layout, so visual effects compositing, for example. And we're here inside the 3D view, into the rendered mode, turn off the overlays, and then go to camera. If we take a look at this here and we use a node that is similar to, let's find a node. So a very typical node that's really good for lenses is the filter node. No, sorry, the glare node. Or, no, glare node. I'm trying to find the one that I really like. Yeah, let's just play the glare. So with streaks, or let's work with streaks, you can mix it in. You can start to see that something is happening, maybe with ghosts. The color modular threshold change, there we go. So in this case, I'm inside the view port here, as you can see in the top right. I've got a ghost. So what a ghost does is I change the threshold to be quite low, but now I can have some kind of lens flares built into my scene, running inside the viewport like this in real time. And if I really want to, I can also work with my color. If I go inside my color options and I go into my color balancing, I can put that in. I can start changing the color of my scene and changing the colors of my actual shot in real time. Another thing I can do is, nothing that's been added, is that inside of the camera pass part out, if you put it to 1, this will make the pixels and the size of the actual effect 1 to 1. So if I hit render, and then it does the compositing, it's going to look almost identical. So here we go. You can see that now the pass per out at 1 is almost the same as the final compositing feature. But the good thing is you can actually see the effect tested in real time inside the viewport. You can also do that to show always, even when you're outside the camera, only in the camera, or disabled completely. So that is coming to 3.5, very big. Other things that are coming is in the geometry nodes. We are getting a new group of nodes. So if we go into my nodes editor, whoops, here, I have it here already. Just delete this. So my nodes layout, for example, in geometry nodes, if I select this ground plane and I add the geometry nodes, if I go into my add menu, you can see that there's now groups and subgroups of nodes. So everything has been reorganized into a new, very clear system of how things work. This is great if you use the side panel in Bforartists. For example, in this curve menu, you can have the read, write, operations, primitives, and topology all in the same panel here on the right. And you can have icons as well, just icons to quickly add what you need if you start to learn the icons that way. Or you can do it with the third panel here. The Shift A button, whoops, sorry. Have I got Shift A? No, I haven't got it. If you use Shift A, the hotkeys, you would be able to, this panel will also call up the same type of structure. So it may be a little bit slower to some things when you have to dig in 3 deep, but when you use the top shelf in Bforartists, it's kind of really nice. The organization is very good when it comes to some kind of logic and concepts of getting and setting data. Other things that we can do now is that if we use this cyclic, as you can see on this node here, this cyclic button is a boolean, which is the pink one, and this boolean, if I put it into the output, into the group input, sorry, you can now see that toggles for cyclic is an actual boolean. Before, it used to be a slider, 0 to 1, but now it is actually a checkbox. So that's coming to 3.5 as well. Other things that are coming to 3.5 is the new asset browser called the Essentials by Blender. So the Essentials browser or pack is a new library of geometry nodes groups, and a future library from Blender is going to come to everybody soon. This includes adding hair to different objects. So for example, blend hair curves or displace hair curves. This is things you can do, or clump hair curves. So let's add something. So another thing that's been added to 3.5 is that in the quick object, quick effects, quick fur, this is now 100% replaced by geometry nodes fur. So now we have this fur system that quickly builds into the plane. And with this fur system, it adds a whole bunch of different node groups, including frizz. It also adds noise. It interpolates the hair curves. So this is the one I want to take a look at. So you can see all these nodes here. We have the first one, frizz hair curve, which is this node group here. We also have hair curves noise, which is one of these node groups here. I'll probably have to search for it, but you can see it eventually. I'm gone blind. Another thing that we have is the interpolate hair curves and the set hair curve profile and the surface deform. So all of these node groups are built inside of Blender now and will come to Bforartists also. You have deformation, generators, guides, reading, utility, and writing. It's all very interesting because this really opens up the doors to what you can do with your curves. And Blender is going to be adding in these high quality assets, which I think is an excellent move. So the only difference here though is that for some strange reason, Blender has decided that these essentials are a library that is baked in, meaning you can't save to it and you can't link from it. You have to always append the asset. Meanwhile, Bforartists add-on, we have it as a library that you can edit, change, link, and append from. So we'll probably keep the library and expand it ourselves. With that, that's coming to 3.5 and other attributes like that. So what else is coming? Real-time compositor. We also have some new widgets for spotlights. And we got a new node in the assets called interpolate hair curve node. And their node trees are really messy a little bit. That's okay. But the interpolate curve node, which is a very nice one, allows you to add more curves between other curves. That's a new one. We also get, when you select an object, here in this object node, for example, you actually have, if I deselect it, you have an actual picker built in now, which is kind of nice. And on top of that, you also have the ability to, if I don't like these properties in the modifier stack, if I think these are annoying and I just want to use this modifier stack as it is, I can now go into the drop-down menu and can I move this to nodes. If I select this node group, you can see that there is a whole bunch of properties and things like this in the top level. If I select this operator, move to nodes, this will group them together as a node group. And it would make the stack collapse into something without the properties. I don't know how to undo this yet, but it is coming to 3.5. Another thing is that when we go into these curves, we have an option to sculpt them, but we also have the option to edit them. So there's a new mode called edit where we can select the hair curves and use edit controls like transforms, things like this, to drive the hair curves with transform controls. So they're probably going to add more controls like this, for example, push, pull, invert endpoints, etc., selecting the linked. All of these operators are coming, and it's a new edit mode in 3.5 and 3.5 of Bforartists. And on top of that, I don't know how it works, but theoretically, just like in ZBrush, or ZBrush, I can use vector displacement in sculpting, which is the big news that's come out this week, and it was merged into master. So this means we can actually use vector displacement maps from ZBrush community to draw noses, ears, eyes, lips, a fingernail, a wart, anything. And we can just displace the mesh in 3D instead of just 2D, up and down with the Z axis. But it does overhanging. So you could sculpt a wave, or you can sculpt the whole air shape with the underhang, things like that, overhang, sorry. And with that, another cool thing that you can do is, like, for example, if I'm in my asset browser and I want to use hair roll, I can drag and drop geometry nodes onto objects now. This means this will add the hair roll to the bottom of the stack, and I can use this to drive how many rolls it does per because the whirl radius, change that down to something less. Whoa, obviously it's not very performant. To check and see why. Probably because of everything. There we go. The hair roll. There we go. This interpolate hair curves there. We'll just use a small amount. So the roll diameter, you can just drag and drop your geometry nodes onto your meshes now. So if you have some things that's designed for a mesh, drag and drop into the viewport and it will apply it to the modifier stack. No need to have the node editor open, which I do recommend having it open anyway, but this is much nicer in that regard, similar to how you would apply materials. So all of this is coming to 3.5. There's obviously a bunch of other little details, including different new types of nodes, other smaller details like a lot of performance is added. For example, EV texture compiling performance is better, normal drawing is better, the hair into surface interpolation is better, mesh drawing in general is better, geometry nodes performance with curves is a lot better. Rendering has been worked on and is a lot better too, especially notably with metal. The next version of EV Next is being developed and is now getting its shadows practically done. Is being built in as well, and a number of other performance features across the board. But these are the key user experience stuff that I've saw.
Trace?
Yes.
I have a question. Why does the node group have all the labels twice?
The node group?
Or almost all the yeah, it says the name twice. Like, it's kind of weird.
Because the name...
No, like in the you see how it has like the factor, this and that, and it says subdivide. It says it twice. This factor, subdivide. See? And
yes.
some of them are once, most of them are twice.
It must be a bug.
Is it like Bforartists bug? Because I don't think I saw that in like the main Blender build.
Yeah, it's probably a bug that I need to report. Because here it's not, but here it is.
Oh, I think maybe. Oh, I think what's happening is it shows it twice, except for if it's Boolean. Booleans are not twice. Actually, never mind. They are twice. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a bug, to be honest. Let me just see if I can make like a new tree.
Or maybe it's just the Blender built-in stuff, you know.
I mean, it's pretty buggy.
I actually do think it's like a Bforartists bug at this point, but it's like only a visual bug, so it probably isn't that big of a deal actually.
It probably needs to be fixed though.
Yeah, I don't recall it seeing the main build, but I need to check it.
It also
Maybe it's the
might be.
tooltips. Maybe they're the tooltips. I don't know. Try making a tooltip.
Okay. Where is the tooltip?
It should be in the group add-on, the group side.
Radius.
Is that like the newest 3.6 build of Blender?
Yeah, this is based on 3.6. I just tried it out today actually. This was built a couple days ago.
Yeah, okay.
So there's probably like
Quick
some
check
bugs.
of it's there.
Oh, and another thing to keep in mind is the release schedule for Blender has been slowed down, thank God. So there's only going to be 3 releases per year instead of 4.
Nice, nice.
For you, it's thank God. For me, it's oh no.
Oh, why is that?
More releases, better no.
Not necessarily for maintenance and keeping things up to
No,
date.
definitely. I'm saying
Yeah.
for that, yes, but for features.
So if you're
no,
like
it's just
developing an add-on, you need to like
Exactly.
fix
That would
every
be-
fucking update again 4 times a year, X amount of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
why
where
I'm saying for like a
thing.
developer, it's much harder.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it might make each release a lot more punchier as well
Probably,
when you have an extra month per release to do polish and feature updates. And
But the thing is, it might be all the same. Like you're probably doing mostly the same amount of work anyways. So, but I guess you don't have to release it multiple times. So
yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think DevOps of actually making releases does require a lot of manpower to do. So when they remove one of that, it frees up a bit of resources to do actual development. That's kind of
And also because Blender, like in the recent years, also fixated on LTS releases, so like manpower also needs to go there to maintain LTS for like a few years.
yeah, that
So
would be
that's
good.
also like lost manpower practically.
True. Oh, and another news, the LTS version number has changed, so it's 3.6. The one after 3.5 will be the next LTS. And after 3.6 or 3.7, we immediately jump to 4.0 for some strange reason. So keep that in mind in the future release cycle.
I think it has to do with years. Every year they're gonna move to a new or something, or every 2 years or something. I don't know. They
think it's every 2
gave a
years.
reason for it. Yeah, they gave a reason for it when they announced the new numbering system.
That's
I am
right.
curious what all the new nodes this release is because I was mainly working in 3.4 because I was trying to make my assets stable. I think I'm aware of like 4 new ones or something.
Yeah, let me just check through
Or
my
5.
notes. There's not many, they've slowed down, but the big one
Yeah.
is the interpolate curve node.
Yeah, and so I need to take a look at that one because that one has a lot of inputs and outputs.
Oh, here's another interesting cool feature that's come out as well, I forgot to mention, is that with animation, you can now actually pin animation tracks on your characters. So for example, if I have animated the location of all these bones, and I want to pin the lock rot and the global root, the lock root, I can now pin it, and I can select any bone, and I can still see these keyframes, even though I have only selected activated. So I can hold the hand, move the hand around, but I can still see the reference of the lock rot animation key. So that's a really cool feature for animation that came in with 3.5.
And red means it's pinned, or just it's red for a different reason.
It's red because I colored the bone red.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So that's what's coming to 3.5. It's exciting. I also have Iyad. I am currently working on the grease pencil brush panel. Hopefully we can get that finished before this release comes out.
I know something that's actually really cool. I'm not sure if it's 3.4 or 3.5. You can set attributes from the viewport. Is this a 3.6 or 3.5?
How would you do this?
You would go to a mesh. It doesn't work on bones because geometry nodes isn't for bones or attributes, or maybe you could. I'm not sure. But so you go to, I think it's in mesh. It's under mesh. And
set
then
attribute.
Yeah.
That
It
would
only
be...
works if you have a attribute selected in your panel. So I guess UVs, you have your UV selected.
color
Whatever you
attribute,
have selected.
attribute,
Yeah, or
UV map.
attributes. So your UV was selected. So whatever's selected there is gonna be set.
And it only has UVs at the moment. Gotcha.
Saying it's very useful for now. Bleebs, I'll tell you, some stuff I was explaining to him like a different time. Like this could be very nice, but the workflow is gonna be horrible because you're gonna have to just set everything through vertex groups and then manually set them. So a lot of stuff I was telling him other times wouldn't be so practical, but now a lot of these workflows can be very easily done.
Yeah, I guess it skips a step where you have to create the group, assign the group, or create a group from assigning, weight paint it to modify it, and then attach the attribute.
What I was saying, what you would have to do, for example, let's say you want to add a float or an integer. Let's say you want to set a bunch of them to an index blank, okay? So you would have to take a vertex group and then use a switch and then switch it with the attribute manually. It's very complicated to do it before. I think it was possible, but it's very convoluted and annoying. I never actually tried it myself because it wasn't worth it to try to do something like that. Yeah. Now this was in development for a really long time. Actually, like a couple months at least, more or whatever. I don't know how long it was being developed. I saw it on Blender's development for a while, and I guess they finally added it, at least in some shape or form, because they had a lot of stuff they were talking about it, and this is like the most plainest version of that. I think there's a lot more to come. So yeah, very very useful.
Seems interesting, yeah. Can't wait to...
even if you're not using geometry nodes, like with the editor, like for example, you can make a system, and then instead of using values, you can use like in the modifier, you can set it to be an attribute, and then you can create an attribute in the side panel, and you set that to the attribute, and then you go into the viewport and change it differently on different parts of the mesh. I think it's a very very useful thing, and it's gonna change a lot of things. I don't know why people aren't talking about it that much, but I think it's massive.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how we can actually work it. Hopefully they will add it to weight painting as well, or vertex painting a bit better. Like painting an attribute would be really nice.
Right. I guess you could technically, I'm saying you can use a vertex group as an attribute.
Yeah, that's the traditional method, but directly painting the attribute. Or no.
It's not that much. It's really not that much harder, is it? It's just not instead of being an attribute, it's a vertex group. It's not. I don't think it's that. Yeah. As well, actually, now you can actually set on the attributes to different domains. And vertex groups, I think, only on vertices. So that's another advantage you couldn't do before. Yeah, it was very annoying.
It's true. Yeah, it's a good thing about attributes is they can be something else, like a face corner or an edge face.
The one thing I really do want is to have custom attributes for curves. You can't do them yet, which is really annoying.
Custom attributes on curves?
So many stuff is about curves, and you can't set custom attributes from the side panel. Could someone make like a Bforartists something or whatever proposal and upvote it? Because I think that's really essential.
Yeah, right-click select personally. Oh wait, you can... Is this like per vertex groups? Custom properties?
No, that's a custom property. That it's not
an attribute.
It's not an attribute.
Right, so it's not built in.
No, you can't set any attributes. It's ridiculous. It's like, hello, you made a whole here system and you can't set attributes from the side panel.
Yeah, it's true, because you can't set
and
vertex groups of it either.
which would mean you would be able to set them from the viewport as well if you had this feature. So I think that's a serious oversight, or maybe just in development. But I haven't heard anything about it. So
Yeah, as far as I know,
yeah.
curves don't have ability to have vertex groups, and if that
But they
concept
can
isn't
have
built in.
attributes though. They even made write attributes. For example, how they had read and write. So they had it
Right.
even in their asset pack. They made write attributes. So you're writing attributes, but you can't even write them properly.
Makes sense. All right,
So
what?
you can have attributes, but they're invisible to you. You can't see them unless you're in geometry nodes. So
True.
this is hilarious. I hopefully, because I don't think I can make such a good report. Whatever. Maybe I'll
We'll
do it
have
sometime. I'm
to
very
have to
busy
draw
though.
it up later, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I
It's
guess
very.
with all that
Just
aside,
want
with the
to bring some
debate,
awareness.
yeah, it's a good awareness. But I need to move on. So today we're currently got half an hour left, and there's a big topic to cover, which I wanted to share with you. And also, before I continue, I wanted to say thanks to the other artists who have been pushing up their art this week. So we're going to take a quick look at that before I do one last final walkthrough and case. And the first piece that we have today is by Les. So Les has been working with his plushie series, and he has created another plushie. So with this piece, we got a little cactus with its blushing, got a cute little shape with its arms sticking out, and a little flower on its head. And he's worked on his velvet shader. So another thing that we can do now is, I guess with the new geometry nodes quick fur system, or using geometry node scattering, where to go? We can now actually use, for example, I wanted to share this technique with you, Liz, just to help you as some feedback. So if your shader is really good, but what really makes a fluffy little character fluffy, or the cloth feel fluffy, is using a sense of fur. So if I use this basic haircut, for example, like this, and I just remove some of the faces, this, and I'll just sculpt it into a new shape a little bit. I'll make it smooth. Move it up to the side here like this. When I'm using my nodes, and I created geometry nodes, and I just instance on points. Sorry, keep forgetting the names when I'm live.
Distribute points on faces.
There you go. Points, distribute points.
Wouldn't just a quick here be easier to do?
Say that again.
Wouldn't just like a quick here from like the side menu, like quick here, quick fur be easier to do than this?
Yeah, it's just not as performant as using hair cards, especially when it's in a micro detail. So when you're using a haircut, for example, to create your hair, well, you have control of the shape. I mean, you could use your fur system as well, but as you saw earlier, sculpting it and shaping it, it's designed for hair and really long fur. But if you have a tiny amount of velvety fur, then you're going to have to use something a little bit more performant. So when you instance on points, we grab this object, pin this, grab the object, drag it in, use this as the instance, and get the normal, put that into the rotation. No, that's not going to do it, is it?
Just use rotation. No, it has it in the distribute points on faces. There's a rotation.
There we go.
You're gonna want to rotate more than right though. It's not gonna be the correct rotation because it's Z's. It usually has Z up as the rotation.
Yeah. And you can make it really small, tiny little bits like this. Really quite high density. And you can add some randomization to your values in the rotation and the scale, things like that, whatever you need. and you can create a very rough basic velvet shader. Go into matcap, for example, use something. Yeah. And you also may need to transfer your normals together. Yeah. But yeah, so you would have to transfer
that
your normal.
actually should be that would be very easy nowadays. You just capture it beforehand, store it beforehand.
You get the mesh here.
Yeah, just store it before the distribute points paces, and it interpolates it properly, and you just use it in the because now
Capture
instance
the
attributes
vector.
are fine.
Get the
Yeah.
normal. And then I set it where?
No, you just store it. You have to do it in the shader. It would have to be in the shader. You can't actually set normals, especially for instances. You would have to be in the shader. But yeah, I would just recommend storing it as opposed to capturing it and then storing it. Same thing. Call it like normal or something.
Point, vector, value. No. And then
you would want to set a material, obviously, because you can't do it without it.
Put this into the fur material.
So if you're doing it on both, if both are going to have the same material, then it's probably better to capture it, to store it on both. But whatever, it's not an issue for the demonstration.
Yeah, it's a bit running out of time. But oh well. So that's the first piece I want to take a look at and just work with the velvet, but I'll have to break better breakdown later. Another piece that we had a look at was say that again, Slink. Hey.
By the way, that like with the duplicate names on the geometry node is a part on the Bforartists, like it's Bforartist sketch, not like Blender main glitch. So in the main Blender path, it's fine.
Okay.
Bforartists, so yes, that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, the last merge was a couple of days ago. We'll need to fix it next weekend. That was on Monday. Okay, good. Yeah, I'll report that after this. How embarrassing. The development build. Okay, so the next piece of art that I really wanted to take a look at was by Mr. Crusader, and he's done a quick video. He's been continuing with his hallways, adding some more details to the hallway work. And the showcase that I really wanted to see was was by Muhammad Emin. So Emin shared 2 furniture pieces with 2 color schemes, and he created some videos that you can find in the finished art chat about how he created these pieces. The one thing that I really liked about this piece was the way he integrated it into his renders with everything else and the details, and using the furniture in context, beside the door, beside a little plant, adding it to the different color jobs, or the different wallpapers and things like this. I thought it was quite clever, and I really liked his animation style. My only critique was some of the transitions within his animation were a little bit too long, and not enough time was spent on the actual setting of when the animation was moving with the screws and the parts. Transition was a little detracting. Everything else was fine. That's one piece that I really wanted to share. I loved it so much. Now, another piece that I wanted to share was a beginner's piece. He's done a, let's recall this user's name. Give me 1 second as it loads. So he's started out as a beginner, and he's working on his first pieces, which I consider very brave. But one thing that really stuck out with me as a first piece was the lighting. So he worked with a lighting at the back, internal light, nice cool blue light with some shadows pointing out, a 3-point shadow, which I thought was really cool. And I thought, as a design standpoint and a lighting standpoint, For a first hit, you've done a really good job. So dynamic CG, you're the user that was that you've been showcased. Can't wait to see what your next renders will be. Keep it going. Another piece of art that I wanted to take a look at was by Standing Pad. So Standing Pad is a regular here, and he has been specializing in Minecraft, and he has done yet another awesome piece with another outfit, and he's been having a good time developing these characters with outfits. I wanted to share this piece as well. Can't wait to see what other outfits come with this as well. So if you would like to take a look at the video by Mr. Crusader and also the video done by Muhammad Emin, I recommend you check out the YouTube link, which I'll hopefully upload. Just give me a second. Oh, and there's one last piece as well, which I thought was extremely large. Let me just, was done by White Rooster Productions. So he's been working on a number of different iterations of his title piece. White Rooster Productions, as a user and artist, has been creating a short film in his spare time and has also been working with a number of renders, and he has a knack for detail and realism with cinematic color grading. So his art piece, which I have here, has been one of them shared in the server, which I thought was extremely well done. So he's been using kind of a glitch effect with a VHS effect or a video effect based on particles in a 3D space. I have no idea how it's done. So this was shared, and it's his, I think, 3rd or 4th iteration on the title. And he may be doing a tutorial series in the future. And I can't wait to see his short film also. And the YouTube the video done by Muhammad Emin, as you can see here, load it up. It's a longer video, about 1.5 minutes or so, and it's a couple of them, but I do recommend you check it out. And then there's The Hallway by Mr. Crusader. We're trying to find. There it is. Never occurred. Oh, that's unfortunate. Video is unavailable at the moment. So Mr. Crusader's saga through the hallways has progressed.
You hear this?
Okay, so it's getting more creepier. There's a story coming on into it. There's some sound. I recommend you take a look inside of the finished art. You take a look at his piece, you can see that there's a person who's walking down the hallway and he's recording a handheld camera, and he hears a lot of people talking down the hallway. But when he goes down the hallway, it's a dead end. There's nothing there, but the sound gets stronger, and he's like freaking out. So it's a pretty good homage to the genre. I can't wait to see where these hallways go. But with that, let's go on to the next piece that I wanted to share with you. And I have a question for you in the audience, if you're still here, is gesture. What do you guys know to be gesture? What is gesture?
Like when you copy the motion or general shape of like the pose or something.
The general shape of a pose. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a good summary. We take a look here, and we go inside the world here. And let's take a look at this image. If we take a look at this character that we have pointing a gun to the screen, you can see that she has an energy, a motion. When we talk gesture, if we take a look at this image here, and we go inside, let's just remove the fur from here. Remove this as well, hide the character. inside the first camera, go into 2D animation mode. So if we take a look and I put this on top, Ctrl-Shift-T, there we go. So if we take a look at this image here on the bottom left, we can see that there's a movement going on in the image. And this movement is, if we take a look at the drawing, you can see that there is a curve that goes around the legs. So let's see if we can actually export the image. Might be a bit better here. Image display. The bigger drawing. I've done a lot of these drawings actually, trying to practice gesture, mainly because this has a definitive technique. If we take a look at my references, and we'll select the same character, which has a very clear gesture. Go inside render, there it is. So if we see this character, we can see that the character is got a very clear motion. If we take a look at the drawing of how we want to draw this motion, let's choose a color that's very bright, like red. The motion of this character, the gesture of this character is like a curve. And you can see that the curve of the character has a movement of how she's moving her body, her shape. It might not be perfect as the general form of the character, but you can kind of see the actual movement of the character as a sense of movement. So gesture is where you capture the flow of the character, the flow of the movement, to kind of get an idea of what's happening in that character. So this gesture as a concept, when we take it to the side here and we start to draw it in a different color, for example, we can take the color and we can think of movements as C curves, as S curves. So for example, an S curve could be like this, and then a C curve, and use another C curve. But C and S are the ones that we want to use, which is the shape like the letter S and the shape like the letter C, curves. And with that, we can kind of create a concept of what the character is doing, or how does it feel? How does this character feel? And we can work on the flow, like for example, the flow, let's load up another character. When you think of flow, sometimes things move and curves and things, but sometimes they break. So if we have another character that has a different shape, for example, this guy here with a knife. Sorry for the violence. But this guy with a knife here, if we take a closer look at him, and we go back into our pen, choose the color that we had earlier, like red. If we take a look at his movement, you can see that his arm goes to a point here, and then it breaks off. Because it breaks off like that, we can kind of see that there is a broken flow. So when we think of gesture and the curves and the flow of movement, we can also see a break in the movement. So because there's a break in the movement, it helps us to kind of control how we see or how we feel this character. So if we draw it from the side here, there's a knife, there's his arm, and it goes around, his shoulders, brings down, his leg comes in, is holding in, his other leg is down like this, and here's his head. Kind of get the motion of what he's doing stuck inside our heads. So this gesture is super important because it helps us read with a very small amount of curves or a small amount of lines, a general shape of what's actually happening, because we have a flow of the movement that's happening, and with that we can help recreate this character movement. Is gesture important if a character is standing still? Let's take a closer look. So if we load another character moment that's standing straight, for example, this guy here. So he's peaceful, he's on his pipe, he's having a good time. Open center preferences. Turn off these hotkeys, please. So we see him here, and he's kind of like standing straight. To the normal person, when it comes to animation and posing with animation and character design, you need to think beyond what you see. You need to feel the flow of gravity. So in this case, when we think of this character, let's think of his pose. He's kind of proud. He's a proud man with his hand behind his back, and he's leaning a little bit forward. So if we have his head here, we can see his head's kind of pushed forward like this. His shoulders are curved around, and his body and his legs goes back. So his legs tapers down, and we can see that his general shape has a gesture of the central spine part, and then his feet come out. And we can work at movement of what's happening onto the character using some small amount of lines. So with that, we can also exaggerate. So we can like bring out his movement like this. We can bring out his arm like this, and we can. He's pulling his head out a bit more. We can always play with that movement and bring out a stronger gesture based on the flow of who this character is. So when it comes to your art, to animation, characters, artificial intelligence generation, or even other things that require more nuance with creating your world and things like this, it is really good to practice a little bit of your art, of how you see the world and how you see the flow of energy and movement inside the drawing, using simple lines like a curve, an S curve. So with that, we can work with the different types of shapes and design of the character. So now that we have this gesture right here, this character standing, let's pick another image and let's apply it to 3D. So now that we have this relatively understood, let's work with it. So just to summarize, gesture is understanding the flow of movement in a pose. It is using S curves, C curves, and broken corners to create a sense of tension or a sense of elegance when it comes to the general pose. When you can understand the gesture in a very simple way, you can either exaggerate it to make it more clear, or you can use it as a base structure to help you pose something that reads the intention of the danger of the character, or his pride, or his elegance from the references that you're using from life. So, is it clear? Do you have a question about this process before we move into the 3D aspect? Let me just look in the chat. Slink likes the new hair tool. That's good. Can this push the crush forward with confidence? No, says Slink, I saw your chair on the head. Yes, we saw this piece last week. Okay, so let's move on into the 3D aspect. So let's load this character, which I have, which is free, here on Gumroad. Let me just pull up the link. So this character is done by Thomas Porter. He has this rig available for free, the low poly rigged character. So this low poly rigged character, I've done some modifications to the rig for this particular purpose, but it's basically still loading. Here we go. Low poly rigged character. So Thomas Porter has a number of cool low poly things to work with. Simple rig, something easy to work with, and this is what we're going to use as an example. Another rig that I do recommend to practice gesture with is a rig that is available as Creative Commons. Zero attribution, no need, but you can find it on Blend Swap. And you get 2 rigs, male and female, with a slightly larger cartoony head. So these box characters are very good to help you start posing nice and quickly, done by Vinchel. So with that, we're going to use Thomas Porter's rig to help us change the pose from a gesture into a 3D pose. So let's change cameras. Let's load up the character, unhide her. Here she is. Let's load up an image. Import images plane. Reference. And let's, which pose should we do? Something simple. There we go, this one. She's just standing with her weapon. Because we're going to have 2 poses. So let's load this one. And we'll load her next pose, which is this one. We have 2 separate poses. You could use any 2. These we can consider as keyframes. So the first keyframe is she's kind of looking at her device and she's like, oh my god, something's behind me. And she turns around and is like, there is something behind me, I gotta run. So these 2 poses are the 2 types of gestures I want to work with. We take a closer look at the drawing. Let's just get the drawing again. We'll go into our notes. If we take a look at the drawing, we can see that her pose has her head down like this, and her shoulders are up like this a little bit, and her body goes back a little bit, and one of her legs is curves down and then out like an S shape, and the other one goes out a little bit. So we can see that her legs are kind of like this, comes in like that, and her arm is coming in and up like this, broken. So we have a general shape of her design. If we focus on the sculpting a little bit, this is a good thing about grease pencils, you can always sculpt into your gesture for a better shape whenever you need it. So we got the first shape here, more or less like this, just to understand her. And then we have the other shape. So her arm, we go to the side here just a little bit. We can pull her arm out like this. We can see that her head's more to the side here. And her arms are pushed around and her body does a twist. And we can see that she's like kind of panicking a little bit, and the leg, one of the legs goes forward and breaks, and the other one goes back in a curved shape. And her other arm is kind of pulled back and then out again, but with an S shape where her hand is kind of like opens up. So with that general idea, we have an idea of that she's got something in her hand. We've got an idea of the general shape of what she's doing, more or less. And with that, we can start focusing on the pose. So let me make this smaller. There we go. So these are the 2 shapes that we have. So if we have a look at our character here, we've got the view. This is the character. And we go into our animation mode with the compositor turned on. Well, let's just disable this quickly. Let's quickly set up the camera. Get out of the camera so that we have a general shape in 3D. What we can do now is we can set the first keyframe, turn on auto keyframe, keyframe location and rotation of all the bones. And let's start with the first shape. In the first shape, we can see that one of her feet is behind, standing on the ground a little bit, and her other foot is kind of to the front here, just kind of standing with her feet apart. This. And she's pretty relaxed, but her body weight is pushing to the back here. So she's kind of, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the body forward a little bit, like this. And I'm going to pull her shoulders back just a little bit. And then I'm going to focus on her arms, where she's going to hold something. Bring it in, bring in the other arm, bring it to the side a little bit and bring it in. She's holding something. But you can see that her motion is she's kind of brought up her shoulders just a little bit. One of them's to the back, the other one's more to the front, and she's holding the device. Rotate the hand around. And her head is actually looking downwards. So this is the first pose that we have here. And so far so good. But what we can do is we need to remember the gesture that we had earlier. Her leg is pulled back and the other one is pulled forwards. And her back is arched more. So as you can see, that's a little bit stiff. So what we can do is we can focus on adding in the C curves a bit more and focusing on the actual design of the poses, or exaggerate them when we need them, to bring out the shape that we want. So if we look at the silhouette here, we can focus on the shape of her, the way her hands are moving, the way her arms bring out the way her head curves in, and we can exaggerate the pose so that we have a clearer language. Bring her back shoulder down a little. Clearer language of how she's standing, and this could be our first pose. And now that we got our first pose, let's change the frame, and we'll jump ahead a little bit, and we will now move her to the next pose. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to reset the rig. I'm just going to remove this keyframe because I don't need it, and this one, which is in the same position. And I'm going to put her leg out. The one in the back goes out. So you push it back, put it back far, so you can see she's kind of crouched down. So in this case, I'm going to pull her whole body down. It's not moving correctly. Edit, View, Tool, Auto IK. There you go. So I'm going to just rotate her body around. It's a bit bigger. See? I'm going to rotate her body around, lean it forward, pull up her shoulder and pull it back because she's holding her arm. Pull the arm out, make the arm curve out as we saw earlier. Pull her other shoulder back because she's kind of freaking out. Pull the head around. Pull the head forward a little bit. I'm using FK now. Let's go back to IK. And pull the hand out, which has kind of this curved C shape from out of her body. And I'm going to change the weight of her body a little bit better. So back, IK off again. Pull the hips up again a little bit, and then pull the leg back with the Auto IK. C shape. Kind of doing a crossed leg little piece, exaggerated a bit more, and focus on the twist of the hips to be less, but twist of the torso to be more. She's kind of twisting her whole body to look back, and she's leaning forward, kind of straining to see what's happening. I'm going to push her forward a little bit, pull her arm down. So the gesture is the arm is curved, the leg to the back is curved, the front curves and then breaks and goes forward again, and the back arm is kind of got this this broken C curve or this small C curve so that we have a better shape. So let's just record all the keyframes and we can take a look. So we have 2 key poses. Obviously we need to focus on better foot placement. In this case, I will use just the normal translation. So her foot's about there. I'll move this to compensate. It's better to have just IK. There we go. She moves back like this. So we have two extremes, and we can focus on the curves. So you can see, because this character, we've focused on the curves of her arms. In this case, this arm will probably have to be bringing forward to hold her balance a bit better. Much better. And she's about to fall over, so she needs to push forward even more. Sorry, I just need to go back to the keyframe. Hold the arm, pull the arm forward a little bit. Maybe pull her forward a little bit. Pull her arm up because she's still straining to see. Make the curve come in a bit better. And there we go. So, gesture. Back to what we were doing earlier. When you understand the curves of the movement, curves of what you see in the actual pose, you can recreate a pose that is very clear as a language and understand what's happening between the two poses. And you can bring out some exaggeration from the body language between the two poses and help create get a very quick animation very quickly, because you understand what curves go where, the general flow of the movement, and there you go. Let's take a look at the time. 1 hour 7 minutes. Check the notes. Kind of drunk. So completely unrelated. Why does the rig look like boxes instead of arrows? In this case, I changed the bounding boxes of the rig, or I changed 2 bounding boxes in the viewport display. So octahedral is the default, but B-bone is the boxy one, which I like better because it kind of looks like controls and it's a bit easier to grab and understand the orientation a bit better. It's less noisy to me. I prefer the boxy method. And if I have bendy bones as well, then I just change that. That's a good question. I'm kind of drunk. Thanks for that. And yeah, it's a setting that you can use to switch the different display of the bones. So thanks for that question. So when it comes to pose, I recommend practicing drawing a little bit, even just simple drawings. They don't have to be complex. The drawings can be really simple like this, just getting the general idea of what a general shape is and working with it, working with the actual lines, almost like stick lines. But the more you do it, the more you'll be able to see it, the better you will be at posing your characters for different types of animation. So, and it also helps with your arcs as well. Since you're working with curves, you can already tell that the arm swings into position. And because it swings into position, it actually helps a lot to work it nicely, because you're working from one arc to another. So that's one of the fundamentals of animation, is working with your arcs, making sure everything moves in curves, S curves or C curves or broken curves, and never in a straight line. But once you do that, you'll be able to focus on your character quite nicely, and you can work on anticipation and follow through and all of the rest. But to get your key poses, gesture really helps. And that's what I wanted to leave with today. Next week, we have a special guest. He's very good at animation. He's very good at production. He's very good at design and rendering. And he's done not one, but multiple short films. So it's an honor to have him speak. And I will be revealing his name later this week. and we'll be connecting next Friday, March the 3rd, same time, same place, to interview him about his independent productions and productions for work in England. So I'm really looking forward to sharing his interview with you later. Thanks for listening and tuning in today. Thanks for sharing your art. Thanks for sharing your opinions as well, Shmuel. And I really wish you all an excellent weekend and a new week. And keep the art coming. This week was very productive, and I loved seeing your work come in from industrial design to storytelling to character design and renders. It's all looking very good. Keep it coming. And with that, I wish you guys farewell.